All right, add me to the stream. Sometimes I don't do that. Welcome everyone to the Betterment Broadcast. Let me add this with the magic of technology. All right, that's so far so good. This is your host, Rap Raven. What I'm going to do is let me go in view mode. Come on, read mode. There you go. Voila! Look at that. All the screen. What am I doing? Oh, sorry. Sneak peek of what's the show to come. What I'm going to do, I just need to send out a text just to let people know. So what we'll do is we'll leave it on that for now. Just for 14 seconds. Hopefully, everyone's make yourself comfortable. Come in, leave a message. Hope you have some talk about. Today's topic will be: Have we failed Caribbean boys in education? This was a request. As you know, we always do requests. So if you got any topics you'd like us to cover, we shall cover it. I just now need to find this piece of text I'm gonna send. So far, yep. Let's let people know we're now live. Hold on. Now live. I'm gonna send this through some of the social networks and what do you call it? Some of the I guess it is social network, isn't it? Yeah, now live. Get rid of the 10 p.m. If you're now live, you don't need to say that. Right. So today we got a good show. Today we got have we failed Caribbean boys? Some of you might have seen some statistics historically or even recently. And we're gonna dive in, read some findings, maybe have some people jump in, give their own testimony, these kinds of fantastic stuff. But right now, let me just post this in. Hold on, paste. Yes, that's good. So far, so good. Add a little image. You gotta put the image in. Let's see. Image, please. All media. Yep. So far, so good. Let's put a nice now live sign. Yep. All right. Now I'm just gonna. It literally will take 17 seconds, family. So not to worry. The killer speed of a millipede. All right. Let's put on all the people. So one, and then voila. Make yourselves at home and tell your friends to join in. Come today. What else we want to put it on? We're gonna put it on them. Yep. And who else? One more put. Okay, we got they go there and off. Excellent. All right. So now we're good. I'm done. All right, you can have my full attention now. All right, let's get comfortable, get the water out. All right, cool. So let's as you know, we have to do the spiel because some people might be new. So this is the Black Betterment Broadcast, show 31. Now let's go through. So after much research, I've unfortunately concluded that currently Black people are collectively inadequate. Yes, very amusing, but nevertheless, it's something that we have to address. So when we're going to discuss things today, people always welcome to jump on. First come, first serve. Sorry. But when you do that, let's make sure we can uphold the 4D values, which are discipline, dedication, dignity, and discernment. See, if you got those four things, then discussions should be relatively easy. Now, can using destructive language instead of derogatory language help Black people stay better on topic? I believe so. Let's do an experiment. So there's some words that people sometimes use and don't use and want to use and can't use and all the rest of it. I recommend the words towards the right-hand side of your screen is better than the words towards the left-hand side of your screen, especially when you're trying to find solutions and be constructive. So let me go through it. So this, to give you time to break that down, just in case you want to jump in to say anything. Here we go. Voila. Now, what is Black Betterment? Black Betterment is Black people helping Black people on Black issues. That's what Black Betterment is, for betterment, of course. Right? Let's not forget that. Now, Black Betterment is a lifestyle. That's right. So we are promoting a lifestyle, everyone. Voila. Now, the question we have today is: Have we failed Caribbean boys in education? That's what today's topic is. So, have we failed Caribbean boys in education? Sometimes, sometimes you see stats when it comes to England. They break things down. They say Black, white, Asian, and then with the Black, they might break it down to Caribbean, African. Then they might break that down to Nigerian, whoever it might be, Jamaican, who knows? But generally, apparently there is some stats, where people want to focus on Caribbean boys. So let's see if we can unpack that. Right. So there's a brother called now if I say the name wrong, shame on me twice. Fahiza. Yeah, Somali brother. Dimi. Fahiza Dimi. Now if I'm saying that wrong, correct me, whatever. But that's a Somali brother who goes around and does research apparently, and he's hired to do so. I stumbled upon on the internet. I'm sure I can give links to his work. If you request it, I shall just type image. I'm sure you'll find it, to be honest. But I'm always willing to send stuff. But let's have a sneak peek at. We're going live. Yep. Let's make sure everything's working fine. Yep, everything's still working. Mic check. Yeah, excellent. Right. Yeah. So so school factors that. So if it is true that Caribbean boys might be underachieving, what the brothers tried to do is do some research and highlight why that might be. Why that might be. I hope I'm still live. Sometimes the thing seems to flicker. Yeah, it's still working. Yeah. So these are some of the issues, as you can see on the screen, but I shall read them out. So head teachers, poor leadership on equality issues. So sometimes it might actually be head teachers. Sometimes it might be head teachers. All right, hold on. Give me 14 seconds, family. Just making sure my internet isn't playing up, as it sometimes does. Is that my internet next door? Hold on. Oh, that one's actually off. Do I need to tether? Oh, wait. Oh, expensive. That's absolutely fine. Oh man. All right, where was I? So, head teachers, poor leadership, blah 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 blah. There you go. All right. So, get comfortable. Why is this not coming out? All right. Well, we are still live. Yep. Sorry, it's my phone. My phone's just playing funny stuff. Anyway, head teachers, poor leadership, equality issues, teaching low expectations. Okay, that's something that might be, curriculum relevance and barriers. So is the curriculum relevant? This might be an issue. Lack of diversity in the workforce. I suspect that might be teachers, because you're talking about. It must be that must be more so teachers. I'm assuming with again of that particular one. Lack of targeted support. Okay, so maybe not dedicated support. Negative peer pressure. Cultural clash and behavior. We should unpack what that means. Exclusion issues and racial equality. Schools ability grouping and the lower tier entry issues. Labeling of pupils and issues with grade predictions. All right, so that could be issue. So for those who are joining, that we're going through some factors that might contribute to some Black Caribbean pupils underachieving. This is what it's by brother Fihisa Dimi, Somalian brother. All right. Well, so now we're going to go to the family and home factors that might contribute to Black Caribbean pupils underachievement. All right, let's have a sneak peek of that. So, lack of parental inspiration and low expectations. Is that something that some parents are doing or not doing? Maybe we need to talk about that. All right. Okay. Low literacy levels and language barriers. Language barriers. Okay. What's that we have to do? Absent fathers, something that has been mentioned. So we should probably want to talk about that. Single parent families and teenage pregnancies. Okay. Okay, social economic disadvantages and of poverty, and then last but not least, poor housing. Poor housing. All right, so we're in the second part. Now let's go to the third part. What are the wider social issues and other factors that may contribute to Black Caribbean pupils underachievement? He starts with institutional racism, class issues. Seems to be there. Cultural and identity issues, media negative picture and stereotype, police stop and search and negative impact on race issues. Yep, the pressure of the government school standard agenda, recruitment and training issues of teachers, educational psychologists. Should that be one line? I don't even know. Just say hello to the people in the family. Hello, hello all. If you're here to say hello, always good to say hello. Like I said, this show is a show that is created by you guys, and whatever you want, we shall do. So a big part of it is, jumping in, saying hi, a community work, isn't it? So hello everyone. Today's topic for those who are joining is what is have we failed Caribbean boys? And some of you might have seen some kind of reports here and there. So we're going through some of the stuff. So what we're going so after the conclusions, and this is what Brother Fahizi Adimi says: the English school system has produced a dismal academic results from a high percentage of Black Caribbean pupils over the last 60 years. So that's quite big. That 60 years is probably encompassing of the children, their parents, and then their parents. So that's quite a lot. Over the past 4 decades, national research has shown that their achievement persistently lagged behind the average achievement of their peers, and the gap is growing at the end of primary and secondary education. So that's what this brother is indicating. Right, so the reasons for the achievement of Black Caribbean pupils are wide-ranging and complex. The following factors were identified as the main reasons for the unachievement in English schools. So these are the seven highlighted main issues that this brother is pushing forward. Head teachers, poor relationship, and equality issues. Okay, that's one. Institutional racism seems to play a part. Stereotyping, that might be something that needs to be addressed. Teachers and low expectations. Are you a person, have you ever been around teachers who had low expectations? Let me know if you want to jump in. Curriculum relevance and barriers, maybe interest. Lack of diversity in the workforce, I assume once again that means teachers, and lack of target support. And then he goes on to, this is the other issues, and there's many stuff in there. I won't read through all, but poor house, it's the same thing as before, but he listed it out in hierarchy. So nice picture there. What we're gonna go back to the question, voila, while everyone's finding their footing. Have we failed Caribbean boys? Now, what I'm going to do, there's one video from a sister on the internet. No, let me see if I get her name. Faye Johnston. She's the center of Pan African thought, and she's saying how schools have failed African and Caribbean boys. We're focusing on Caribbean boys, but she mentions it as a whole. And let's see if I can do this at the killer speed of a millipede. So we'll go share, watch this video, and it should be in the same folder. No, it's not, but it will be in 17 seconds. There we go. So it's got a 7-minute while you guys create. Let's see what the sister has to say. And voila. Meanwhile, I shall.
Right now, having worked in mainstream schools for over 30 years, it's been interesting stepping out of mainstream to see exactly why it hasn't worked. First of all, the mainstream schools are too large. There is absolutely no way that you can give the wraparound care to children, and for any one teacher in any one day, if you have, let's say, 5 periods a day, you're dealing with sometimes about 150 different children every hour. It is impossible to give wraparound care. Now, children come into school with a multitude of issues from home, from the streets, from peer pressure, etc. And they're not being addressed in school because teachers simply don't have the time. Schools are regimented by bells, pips, subject time limitations, and I thought that one of the reasons for Enterprise Diamond was to eliminate all of that, because life is not about putting things in little pockets during the day. So that is why they're failing. So the teachers don't have them. Everything is too results driven. To get on the league tables, that's all that matters. And you have a number of children whose needs, their mental health, they are being sidelined because of just to get the right results. So that's one reason why they fail. 2, the curriculum in this country is Eurocentric. It doesn't address the fact that Britain as a multicultural country needs to be embracing everyone's cultures. The Black History Month is a token gesture. Every year, schools roll out the same American heroes that after a while becomes meaningless. In this country, we have got our own unsung heroes. We have got people in the community who are doing great things, who are never talked about. So they become unknown, unseen, unrecognized. And as far as the majority of children, black children up and down this country, they haven't a clue that these people exist. We look at some of the Black history cards, they're all American, and that's fine. But where's our version? So we have a lot of people who will do fantastic things, they will live and die in this country, and nobody will know anything at all about it. So that's one of the reasons why children fail. Number two, for those children who have had parents who have gone through this education system here in the UK, they find a lot of their parents have had negative experiences of school themselves. So they are unable to pump the enthusiasm into their children because they're very fearful. And the only time parents are called into schools is if something goes wrong. You know, you pick up the phone to ring a parent and it's like, what has he done now? What's she done now? They expect bad news all the time. So, you know, because school doesn't have a positive image. So by embracing, you know, the various different cultures and celebrating it, you know, until that is done, schools are going to fail. Now we have, for example, the GCSEs in this country is the be-all and end-all of the road to employment. But there isn't the scope on the national curriculum to celebrate or to promote literature written by Black writers. So for those children who, you know, who are being taken through, let's say, for English language and English literature, which is one of my subject areas, they will go through that course because it's very prescriptive, not knowing that there are fantastic writers out there whose work they can study. And they would go through the entire school and never ever know it. So these famous and fantastic writers out there are just being sidelined in favor of the national curriculum. Now when I started, I was already teaching when the national curriculum came, you know, its inception. And very little has changed, if any, in over 30 years. So it's the same thing that's rolled out year after year, almost at the same time every year, the same thing is rolled out. So not just for the children, the teachers lose the enthusiasm when you've been doing the same thing for 15 years running. You lose that enthusiasm. It's difficult to sometimes pump it into children who might be doing it for the first time, but for the teachers, it's the same old resources, tired and, you know, over and over again. So for our children, the Black children in this country, they just switch off because they don't see anything. They look at the books and they don't see images of themselves or images that look like themselves in all the books. We look at the heroes and they're all white. You know, I had a bit of a shock with my own children who, because since I started my own school, I went out and I bought a lot of resources and a lot of books with, you know, starting from books for young infants with a lot of Black faces. Now, when my children were growing up, they read all the traditional fairy tales, etc. And I only found out recently from my daughters that when they were growing up, they thought that in order to look beautiful, they had to be white. And I was completely and utterly shocked that, you know, so for me, you know, I'm hoping that when I have my grandchildren, I have it start that, you know, that they see themselves as different. And, you know, my children are not an isolated case. This is happening all around. There's no images of themselves, the positive images of themselves that are not caricatures that they can relate to. And if the curriculum doesn't provide for it, you know, they may have a bit of Chinese New Year and they'd have this but where are the cultures coming in from Africa? You know, from the motherland, there's nothing there. The things that are celebrated in the Caribbean, there's nothing there. There's no space on the curriculum for it. So the children would spend 75% of their lives in school between the ages of 5 and 16, and there's nothing there to represent them. You know, they will go out onto the streets where they will find their own, and goodness knows what they're getting up to. And for those children who come from homes that are broken for one reason or another,
all right,
where the
few more seconds,
single parent who's there might be out 2-3 jobs to try and make ends meet, those children are even further lost. And that is why we have the problems that we're having now. So until the curriculum is addressed through our own schools, so that those children have a sense of identity from day one, And instead of French and Spanish, or as well as French and Spanish and German, we could learn Swahili. You can have, you have more teachers coming in who look like them, that they can have something to aspire to. And that is very, very important.
There we go. Thank you, Sister there. Now, let me switch across, add that to the stream. So just, quick diagram that was in the report. So according to this report, if you look, I mean, don't know the ratio, the pixel, the HD of your screens at home. But you see, apparently, from 2004, you see that apparently Black Caribbean children have been relatively low. When you break it down like that, the mix, and looks like the only ones next to them is the mixed Caribbean children. Hello, fam. How's it going? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just want to say the majority of what she said, I 100% disagree with her.
Agree or disagree?
Disagree of the point she listed.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, like I said, let me just say this, and then you can jump to your perspective, and we see what it might be. So that's what the data is saying here, from here. But we've got two guests. We've got Sister Betty and Brother Ahmed, and they, as usual, first come, first serve. People can jump in and give their opinions and talk, and experiences, and hopefully solutions, things to be aware of. But welcome, you guys. How's it going?
Hi, Raven. Thank you so much for doing the show on this subject. I agree with her. I agree very much with her. I like that slide before that you listed when you talked about the teachers expect they don't have high expectations of Black students. And also if they're boys as well. I've noticed that. Right. And then they like to diagnose you with lots of different illnesses and disabilities like dyslexia, dyspraxia, attention deficit disorder. I definitely agree with that. And also the curriculum doesn't reflect Black people's Black Caribbean people's history or experience. And if it does, they'll talk about slavery. That's the only history that they have. And the lack of Black teachers. So I agree with most of what she said. I can't really find any fault in anything that she said.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Sister Betty. Brother Ahmed, you said that there's some things that you would like to have your opinions on. Go ahead. Oh, if you're still there, Brother Ahmed. Brother Ahmed? No. Slow internet. Bandwidth. Didn't pay the bills. Happens. Well, brother, whenever that's where you can jump in and we'll talk. Oh, maybe this is him. Oh, here we go. Okay. You there, brother? Your phone. I don't think it's mine. I think it might be you, brother. If you are speaking, we can't hear you. I'm sure you'll drop in some good stuff. No? Well, keep trying to talk, and when we hear you, you can have your say. We've pushed the link in the group family. Today's topic, for those who don't know, who are joining, especially those who might be Caribbean, it might be your chance to jump in, is have we failed Caribbean boys in education? Yeah, brothers had to come back. Have we failed Caribbean boys in education? And yeah, according to this report, it has been challenging for 60 years. And if we strip across currently, this is the grid of A's and C's in English, maths, and science. English and maths, sorry, not science. And yeah, it seems that there is something going on in the Caribbean household, the Caribbean school. There we go. We're just going to add Brother Ahmed again. I'm sure he had something he wants to say, and it's very important. Go on, Brother Ahmed. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. As I was saying, Caribbean boys are failing for one of three reasons: corruption, resources, and values. What do I mean by this? I genuinely believe, going through the UK education system, and I passed all my GCSEs and all of that, so right. I'm not, but when I say corruption, I do believe that when it comes to white pupils, they do inflate the grades and they do, artificially increase, the scoring for
Hmm.
them, which may help them come out of top. Resources, Raven, you and I, we went through the school system. We're both men. Looking back to your school days, do you fondly remember any white pupils in your school? Because if they were, it was far and few between for me. What about you?
When you say, do I remember any fond memories? Is that what you asked? Is that the question? Oh,
Wait
is your
1 minute.
phone?
Give me a second. I'm gonna go upstairs.
Yep, I understand hard times. That yeah. So the brother, he said there's three reasons he thinks. I think one he said was corruption, which he is implying that somewhere along the line some cheating is going on, which is in something you have to expand on. Next thing I think he said was I forget, my memory's not as good as his. So when he jumps back in, he'll have to go over it. But brother Fiyiza Dimi, he's listed some reasons that might be challenging for Black Caribbean pupils. And, at the head of his list is the head teachers and poor leadership. So, I mean, I guess if the ship's going down, you have to blame the captain, right? Institutional racism, stereotyping, these things seem to play a part. And obviously, I think Sister Betty was talking about low expectations and these kinds of things, and it seems to be there. The curriculum, I think the Sister Kay was talking on the video about the curriculum, how it represents the people who are learning. Like a
Can I
diversity.
mention something, Raven?
Go ahead, you most certainly can. Go ahead.
When I looked at statistics, um, when Caribbean boys come into school, they're at the same level as Black African boys. What you notice is when they hit key stage 2, they start dropping. Then when they get
Hear
to
me
a
now?
level, they start dropping.
We can hear you
Hear
now.
me now?
Yep.
Okay.
This is debate. Just say a final. You can finish your point, guys. This debate.
Yeah. So basically, what happens is it's not about genetic ability because they say when they come into school at 4 or 5, they're at the same level as their Black African counterparts. But the longer they stay in school, the worse they perform, and they are just under white traveller children that don't really attend school.
Right. Okay.
All right. Okay. So, as I was saying, to expand on my point, there are 3 reasons: corruption, resources, and values. Going back to corruption, to retouch on my point, I was saying that I do think the system, to a certain extent, is skewed to white pupils' advantage. And the reason why I say this, and if I want to bring some evidence, there's this journalist, this controversial right-wing journalist called Toby Young, and he managed to get into Oxford with, I believe it was 1B and 2Cs. And as we know, Oxford is an institution that's renowned in the world for being very difficult to get into. If for some reason he was able to get into Oxford, a prestigious institution with only 1B and 2Cs in his A levels, and I was delving, into his background and his, family, and I found out that he's linked to the British aristocracy through either his father or his mother, and he has some connections. Hence why, I've come to the conclusion that there is corruption, absolutely. A lot of these wealthy families, to them, it's no problem for them to bribe some of these, examination boards and corporations to actually write the tests. The second reason is resources. The schools in the inner cities, the state schools clearly do not have the same resources as the public schools. Schools like Harrow and Eton that can afford the best resources and the best staff for their pupils. And the third reason I think is culture. I think if you compare Caribbeans to, let's just say, Africans, I feel as though Caribbeans are not raised to value education as much. And that may be a factor as to why they perform. So those are my 3 reasons.
Okay, thank you, brother. We're joined by Brother Carl. Brother Ahmed just given his opinion. Brother Carl, welcome to the Betterment Broadcast. Would you like to give your opinion on anything at the moment?
How you doing, Brother Raven? How you doing, the African family? Yeah, it's a great topic. Um, I have to disagree with Brother Ahmed. You know, you know, the African Caribbean. You know, you know, we have failed them. You know, and I
I
think that we
agree.
have to stop speaking individualism as well. You know, we have to stop all this because we can say, oh, the Caribbeans compared to the Africans and, you know, the education. However, even if you got education, and as I said to you, W.E. Du Bois was a Pan-Africanist, you know, in the time of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. He had all the education and still did not prosper. So when we keep, you know, looking at it as, you know, the deviation amongst, you know, the Europeans, etc. What about what we need to do? You know, what about us? You know, like teaching at home.
Mm.
What about us Pan-Africanizing our kids? You know, Booker T. Washington did it. He did it in a barn. There was no resources, you know, and he was teaching the African descendants in a barn. And they went in the bin, and he asked um, George Washington Carver to go in the bin and get all these resources from the bin, and they built a school in a barn. So we, you know, keep relying on the education system, but as a Pan-Africanist, it's not there for you. Your institution's in your home. You know, you can teach at home. You can, you know, bring all those resources in your house. Ancestors did it before us. Why can't we do it now? That's what the question is.
Mm.
But you can't build a school out of nowhere. You need a starting point, and I can't. I feel like the problem with you, brother Kel, is that you kind of have an ego, and the reason why I say this is not to be disrespectful, is going back to W.E.B. Du Bois, you were saying that he wasn't successful when we know through history he graduated from Harvard University. I think he's one of the first African Americans to do so. And then you talked about the education system is not there, and then you talked about how we shouldn't compare Africans to Caribbeans. I think you know when we get to that argument where we just have to ignore facts and statistics, or even confront hard truths because it makes us feel some type of way, we're gonna have to check ourselves, because if we can't even look at the facts before us and not feel some type of way, or at least come to terms with them, then I think that's a problem when it comes to progression. And the reason why we have a problem with confronting the hard truths is because of our egos. So we should compare Africans and Caribbeans and see why is one community better than the other in relation to education, and see how we can bridge the gap, because we're all here to bridge the gap. We don't want we're not saying this to make it seem like Caribbeans are dumb and Africans are not. We're not here. We're here to narrow the gap and to get them at the same level. So we're gonna have to confront hard truths. But yeah.
Can I
I know,
mention? Okay, yeah, because can I just mention? I was the one that asked for this show to be done because when I was looking at the statistics, yeah, Black Caribbean boys have 5 times a higher rate of permanent exclusions than their Black African, yeah, counterparts, yeah. When you look at when you look at temporary exclusions, yeah, when you look at you've got Black African, and Black African is at 4.3%. Yeah, White British at 6%, and Black Caribbean is at 10%. So it's more than double the rate of their Black African counterpart. Now, if they're permanently excluded, it is the pipeline, the school to the prison pipeline, because that means he's out of school. And what will happen for a Black Caribbean boy that is out of school? How many times do you see them end up in the newspaper? Somebody stabbed them, somebody killed them, or they're in prison. You can't ignore and romanticize this issue. If you ignore it, these children are going to continue to fail. And if you really believe in Pan-Africanism, you would make sure that you cater for all of the African diaspora. If they are having issues, then you show compassion and you find a way to bring them up to their Black African counterparts.
And that's what we're here to do. So when you say, show compassion, what do you mean?
But you like statements like saying don't compare Black Africans and Black
No,
Caribbeans. Yeah,
Brother Kel
you
said,
do.
he
Yeah,
said don't compare, and I said we're gonna have to compare if we want to narrow the gap. I know it's hard truths. Some people may feel some type of way, but you're gonna have to kick that to the side. That's what
even
I'm
when you
saying.
look at the GCSE results, Black Africans outperform Black Caribbeans, especially the boys.
And what does that say?
So you've got to do something about it. You can't just leave the children, because how many of them end up dead and in prison?
Who's saying that?
But
Nobody's
they could
saying
have
leave the
a
children.
better life.
Right. So
I'm not replying to you, Ahmed. I'm replying to what Kyle said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think what we have three people talking about similar things, but verging off at different points. And obviously, Brother Carl and Brother Ahmed and Sister May can jump in at their own points. But what I'm getting from it is, I think Brother Carl was saying that at a certain point there is a value in teaching very close to home, homeschooling, these kinds of things. And I think he gave a historical reference of what that was. I think he obviously Brother Carl have to speak. I think he was saying that even with great education, with that direction, you might still be doomed. But this is Brother Carl's spot. So go ahead, Brother Carl. Do you want to jump in?
No, it's exactly what you just said there. This is not about emotion, and it's not about feelings. What Brother Ahmed needs to understand is that this is about all of us sticking together. Now, we can talk about that education and that education, but as I said to you already, you mentioned W.E. Du Bois. At the same time, W.E. Du Bois suffered from individualism. He thought socialism would be better. And then when you read his autobiography, which I have, because I'm a Pan-Africanist, he left, gave up his citizenship in America, and went back to Ghana. And he realized it doesn't matter how educated you are, white supremacy is white supremacy. The fact of the matter is, the African Caribbeans face what they face. Because first of all, the first set of Africans in modern history who came to the UK were the African Caribbeans. Do you understand? So you've got to understand the importance of what they've done over here.
That's actually a lie.
And
go ahead.
I'm not lying. I got the facts. And why would I need to be?
Somalis
Why would I need to be lying?
In the UK way before the Caribbean, in places like Cardiff. Go ahead.
I'm talking about the modern day when they were sent over to build up the UK. That's what I'm referring to. Okay. Now, the education system. I've worked in the education system before. I used to work in the children's home, right? And what I've noticed, this was like, 20 years ago. What I've noticed, right, is that when it comes to the African descendant children, particularly the Caribbean, they're not taught about racism properly. I know that for 101. They're not taught about racism properly. And the African Caribbean kids, no different than any other African descendant, is that they've been taught to get along with everybody at school, and you don't have to worry about this, worry about that. And then when they go to school and when they're encountering non-Africans and that, and they face the racism, they do not understand why their parents haven't taught them. So in a sense, it's like a resentment to the parents as well as to the one who's been prejudiced to them. And that's why I was saying that we have to start at home. The institution has to be at home. The African Caribbeans need to be taught racism properly. They need to be taught on a Pan-Africanist Garveyism way. If it's not that, then they'll hate the parents, and then that's why they're going to do certain things.
Thank you, Brother Carl. Brother Carl gives point there. So I think just to expand what I pulled from that, so you can, Brother Carl saying that one of the fundamentals that that might be very valuable is to actually teach children the challenges they're going to face, and I guess the history of the challenges. Because by not teaching them, when they encounter it, when they expect there to be a more like inclusive, everyone's on the same page ism kind of thing going on, they might develop a hatred for the parents for not protecting them from such experiences and so forth. I'm just going to add Sister Empress Kushti to the panel. Welcome, sister. As you've joined, would like to add anything to this particular topic at all? Welcome, by the way.
Blessings.
Jump straight in.
Blessings, family. It's
Listen.
a really good topic. So, thank you, Sister Betty, for suggesting it. Yeah, there's a few things I want to add, just like the points that Betty initially said at the beginning, that it's interesting that at primary stage, both African and Caribbean children actually excel in primary school. And this has been a known fact within Britain for a long time. So as she said before, it's not the fact that there's a difference of what they can achieve, because clearly they can achieve something great. But it's when they get to secondary school, things start changing. And I think that's what we should probably focus on, why that happens. I think as well as I'm actually a product of both. So my mum's Jamaican and my dad's Nigerian. So this is a very interesting topic. I'm just listening in first to listen to people's points. And I think I agree with both points that Betty and Brother Cal said, in the fact that when I was growing up, most people who had gone to school who are from African descent are probably second generation. So their parents have either come from Africa and then they were born here, if that makes sense. So when you go home, you have this emphasis on education. I know definitely from a Nigerian point of view, and they're very well known of just having an emphasis of educations and books first. And I feel like with the Caribbean side, although I think it's a myth to think that all Caribbean parents just don't have an emphasis in education, because there are some very militant old school Caribbean people who have a very strong emphasis and sense of education. But I do believe that some of them have perhaps, their parents are not first generation, and they kind of rely on the system a bit more. So kind of like what Brother Cal was saying is that they kind of get involved in this we're all the same kind of concept, whereas in the African side it's just do your education, do your books, you're not the same as them, your education kind of comes first, you need to hold on to that. And you kind of see that developing where they perhaps do think that they could just get away with the same things that the white kids could get away with in school, whereas the African kids were very much into their books more so. But I don't believe that that's the side of the education. This is where I kind of agree with Brother Cal, because to be honest with you, to expect most, maybe now, but back in the day, they couldn't tell which one was African and which one was Caribbean. Maybe some of them could if they were intelligent enough to look at the surnames, but even then, not every surname is overtly what you'd consider African, if that makes sense. And they would not necessarily know, looking at a black kid, which one was African, which was Caribbean. They wouldn't even take the time out to really assess that far. I think that's a new trend where they even assess us. So I do think that the emphasis needs to be from home, and what they're getting from home, what is the message they're getting at home, what is getting drilled at them at home, what is the priority that they're given at home. So I think that kind of comes into it, and it's about, if there is a problem which has been highlighted continuously, and I have noticed that in the press they are making it more and more of a thing. When I was younger, when I was in school, there was never this separation between African and Caribbean. It's like they just lump us all as in one. All of a sudden now they know the differences. And if that's the case, we need to kind of look into that as a community. And if there is a problem with the Caribbean kids, which we know there is, we need to look into that and the emphasis in education and putting the onus on at home to educate and to reinforce that. Although what I will say is that what I have noticed now is that with a lot of the like teenager age, a lot of them are getting involved a bit more into gang violence, if you want to use that, and the stabbings and stuff like that. More and more of them are becoming African in London.
Yeah.
So there is a turn that's happening, which is a worrying turn. And that's why it's something that we all need to look into, because why is that happening now? Because those same kids do have first generation parents that I've noticed as well. So there is a turn happening, and I think it's the breakdown of the family rather than us relying on the educational system. So that's my point. Not to waffle.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good points there. Very interesting. Anyone want to jump on top of that? Add to that in the group?
Yeah, what I would like to say that the downturn for Caribbean boys in particular, it happens in primary school. It doesn't start in secondary school because it starts at key stage 3. It doesn't start in. You'll start to notice the difference in the percentage. So I think if you wait until secondary school, it's going to be a lot of catching up to do. You know, whatever's going on in primary school for those boys in particular, you know, certainly has to be addressed. Because it's not like when you compare both of those groups, it's not like they're at the same level when they end primary school. They're not. You can see a marked difference at the age of 10 between both of those groups. And it's the Black Caribbean boys that are falling behind.
So, you know, I think what Sister Kushi was saying is that the family life is playing a key role here, as in like the motivation from the parents and direction given. And she's saying there might be a tendency for people, some of the Caribbean community, that might just leave big responsibilities onto the state or into the school, rather than trying to create that foundation first. And I think that might correlate with what Brother Carl was saying, is in like mentally preparing your children for school and I guess for how to thrive in society, and how to prepare yourself for shortcomings. I mean, when we look at the report we have here, there's certain things that the brother was saying, and when the wider issues, what was the breakdown? You know, institutional racism, number 2. He was funded. This is what he found. This is a Somali brother. And it would be good to because I understand that even within the African diaspora, as in the direct African diaspora on the continent, even amongst the nations there are some problems. And I suspect when Abby comes back, we might cover one day. I understand that the Somali boys might be going for a similar thing as well. And we have to really
Yeah, when you look at the Somali, when you look at Nigerians, Ghanaians, and when you come to GCSE, they're reaching 70% of them will get for GCSEs from A to C. But when you look at the Somalis, it plummets to it was around 30%. It might start slowly growing up now, but the Somalis are the one that bring down the African average.
And the brother who did this report is actually a Somali brother, and I think he was looking at, I think, Caribbean, Somali, maybe Portuguese, and so I can't remember. So there was a list of things, yeah. So brother Ahmed isn't here, but yeah, it is definitely something to bring up, as in like the role you play in your children, right? What do you teach before they go in, and you know, if we look at some of these lists here, you know, so single parent families, obviously the socioeconomic disadvantage. So that's a challenge. Having low income is a challenge, I guess. If you don't have a family structure, that might be a challenge. I'm assuming poor housing. You get a lot of that in London and England, I guess. But social class issues, a lack of role models, and peer pressure. I mean, I guess the role models, you could correlate that in some degree to what Carl is saying. And I guess what Sister was talking about with some of the Nigerians who might have, not Nigerians, Africans, and so West Africans and Central Africans who might have actually been affected by negative peer pressure, where they might have historically come from a group that got well, but some slipped through the cracks. Quite a few has been observed when it comes to gang culture. They're saying, funny enough, it has been saying that for 60 years. I think in the conclusion, where was it? It was said something like for 60 years. Yeah. The black Caribbean people over the last 60 years. That's something that I think it is something that we should talk about.
It's a long-term problem because it's not a short-term problem. One of the things when I was looking at the problems with the Somalis, one of the issues was, for example, a country like Nigeria, the administration language, the official language is English. Things are done in English. In Somalia, it's done in Somali. Yeah. So that's the issue, that some of the parents, when the children were going home, they're not able to speak English the way a Nigerian parent would. Yeah. So they can't help their children because they don't have, they don't speak English that well compared to, a Nigerian.
Yeah, and that might be also issues in like Bangladeshi homes as well, I believe. Maybe Bangladeshi and some there was. I remember back in the day that the language barrier was one challenge. I don't know if that's been resolved, but I remember hearing that. But that is interesting. That is interesting.
I mean,
I don't know. Is there any?
It's a long time in the education world, right? If it's every 5 years, 60 years is a long time. That's a real big problem. There's a lot of kids falling through the crack through that.
Well, they've made a distinction in this particular grid to highlight Black Caribbeans and mixed white Caribbeans. So it's almost like anything connected to Caribbean seems to be operating at the bottom of this grid, by the way they're displaying it. So I think regardless of this exists.
Don't you think there's a stereotype? I can honestly say when I was at school, there was a stereotype that Caribbean boys, they're not going to become anything. It's their women that will become something. And this is what you got from the teachers as well. It wasn't just your peers around you. I didn't see teachers pushing Caribbean boys. You know what I mean? If they and also I think they were more aligned to what you call it, street culture. So if they got into issues, the school wasn't going to go beyond the call of duty to help them because it's they're from the Caribbean. And don't you remember all that at that time when they had all this Yardie, when they kept on popularizing the Yardie issue on TV and the gangs. And I'm sure that if you were a Black Caribbean child, especially if you're a boy, you were getting tainted with that brush.
You know what, Brother Raven, right? Growing up in the 80s, right? What I remember in school and stuff, right, is that, and this is where, for me, brother, I have to always return it back to Africa again, because if we remove Africa out of it, what's going to happen is you're going to get more of these problems. What I noticed, brother, is that the teachers, not just the teachers, but the kids understood this. And I want my African family to understand this. If you are from Africa, or if you even attempt to even strive for education, you're looked down upon. So what you got to understand is this. As a Pan-Africanist, right, I have no choice but to refer back to the continent. If the continent is not organized, right, then the children are not going to be organized. Now, Sister Betty, all due respect to her, she was mentioning the yardies and etc. and stuff like that, right? However, at the same time, when you are an African, the Europeans and the Asians, they say this, well, all you Africans are good for is, you know, walking around, you know, promiscuous and etc. That's what they say. And the reason why they say that for is because Africa is not sorted out. The African Caribbean suffer because Africa is not sorted out. The Nigerians, the Somalians, all of us, Brother Raven, we suffer because Africa, the mother continent, is not sorted out. You can have as much qualifications you want. You can bleach your skin. You can get rid of your name. You can talk as white as English or not. Your struggle is connected to Africa. If that continent is continually being abused and attacked, the children will be abused and attacked. And that's for all these statistics in regards to the Caribbean and the Nigerian. That stems back to a German racist who came up with the statistics to divide and also to systematically oppress ethnical races, particularly us as African people, from getting anywhere far. That's why there was an African descendant by what's his name again? Is it Robert Williams? He came up with a curriculum called the BITCH test, where what he found out was is that the Europeans, whenever they would like give like exams to the African descendants, that they were failing because the parents wasn't teaching the African descendant kids the vocabs as well as the idioms what the Europeans use. So he said to himself, well, this is racist. Even though the African descendants need to be being sharpened with the education system. So he done one for the Europeans with the African idioms, etc. And they all failed. So that's what I'm saying. It's like these statistics, although it's there, but at the same time, it's still racism. It's still a thing to divide Nigerians, Caribbeans, Somalians away from each other. So we have to be very careful of these statistics.
Okay, so what I'm going to say is in relation to these Caribbean boys, when you look at a country like Jamaica, the same issue is there, that the boys in their schools underperform compared to the girls. So it's a problem that is being brought from Jamaica into the UK. It's not like when you look at the information for Jamaica that the boys are doing just as well as the girls. So is it racism in Jamaica too? Why the girls are the boys?
Can I answer that? Well,
Go ahead.
Sister Betty, you need to. Oh, you want to say something, Brother Raven?
No, I'm saying go ahead. You make your point, brother.
What I was gonna say is that we keep on forgetting the Willie Lynch tactic. We keep forgetting that. Those who don't know about it, they need to understand it. It has been done by design to make the women become the men and make the men become the women. This is what was going on, not only on the African continent, but in the Caribbean. Do you understand? So when it comes to the women outdoing the men, right? We already know already the power of the black woman. So it's not a thing where like, oh, how can the black woman outdo the black? No, she's always been that type of a higher being in that type of education. We're talking about systematically oppressing and reversing the roles. And that has happened. It happens in the African continent. Why is it that? And I want Sister Bed to answer me this. Why is it that in the African continent, right? And even my people have to be held accountable for this as well. Why is it that the men don't have to do anything, but the women have to do everything? The women have to work, but the men, they don't have to do anything. It's the same thing in Jamaica, the Caribbean, and it's the same thing in Europe, because it's a systematical tactic what they've used. I truly believe, right, that the Africans on the continent suffer from colonization disorder, and the Africans who were kind of brought to the Caribbean and they suffer from post-traumatic slavery disorder. Both of them are equally comparable to each other, but at the same time, there's certain elements where one is affected a lot more than the other, and we keep forgetting these things. We're talking about statistics, but why are we not going to the core of the problem.
I think we have a different perspective. So when you have a look at the Caribbean, you've got Jamaica, Barbados, St. Vincent, Grenada, all talking about males underachieving in high school. Now, in relation to African, when it comes to Britain, African men are the most qualified out of all the black groups. They are most likely to the ones that have the degrees. So the issue of underperforming is not a problem in the African community. Yeah, in terms of in Africa, the girls are less likely to go to school. It's the boys that have the qualifications. So the underachievement of African boys is not an issue in Africa. It's actually the girls that are the focus. Now, in relation to what you said, something about African men not doing anything, that's just not true. I don't think you've been to Africa if you think that African men just sit there and boys that do nothing. It's not a place where lots of people have washing machines, running water, and stuff like that. I think it's just a stereotype and generalization that you're making, because they do something. You only have to go on the coast of Gambia to see them making boats, building houses. What do you mean that African men and boys are not doing anything? It sounds like you've not even been to Africa by that statement.
Okay, so Brother Raven, do you want to interject or?
Well, yeah. Before you jump in, yeah. So we once again, I think Sister Berry and yourself, Brother Carl, you're looking at the same outcome, but you're looking at different different causes, different pillars that cause that kind of outcome. And I suspect there's much truth to both of what you're saying. Yours seems to be more shrouded in a historical concept, and I think when you're talking about the group psychology now, it's like by looking at a continent as Africa is strong and Africa being consistent in the way it operates, by proxy, people will look at black people as strong, and that kind of is how it works when it comes to say China, Asia, these kind of places, right? I think what Sister Betty is saying is she's noticed a consistency in the males underachieving in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean males underachieving here. And because of that, she wants to have a right now solution for it. While I think Brother Carl is more of a historical understanding towards it, and a more micro, while I think Sis is more of a macro. If that's right, it's macro, yeah. But you speak, Brother Carl.
But Brother Raven, what good is an education, right? What good is an education if you have a European ideology in the education? Because we can be all educated, we're all educated, you know what I mean? However, why are we still in the same situation we are? We've got educational, we know mental health, we know all these types of things, but we're still in the same situation. So is it really, Brother Raven?
So let me just say that I think both sisters, especially who are viewing at home today and who will listen on future time, I think Sister Betty and Brother Carl have brought up some really very important points. And funny enough, I agree with them in unison. How I would unpack it is I would say what I take from Brother Carl that's most important is when we send our children to school, but by letting them understand the history, letting them understand a kind of pillar, and the pillar that Brother's pushing forward is Pan-Africanism as it pertains to Marcus Garvey's teachings. And the reason is because it's a defense. It's a defense psychological mechanism that allows them to deal with all the challenges, but it also places them at a certain point where they know why they're doing what they're doing and how it can collectively benefit them. Right? That's important. I think, and Sister Betty can have to jump in. The value I extract from what Sister Betty is saying is within these institutions that the kids are learning, there are particular tangible skills, actual hand-to-hand skills that could be learned, and if the mind frame was correct, could be utilized to build a bigger community or a bigger kind of collective. So the area of interest I enter this is the actual concept of actual technical skills, not necessarily being trained to forget to do stuff that isn't in the best interest of the community you're from. You see, so the tangible skills is what I'm always going to push. but with the backing of what Brother Carl's saying, that before a person can learn those skills, they have to understand where they're coming from and the purpose of how to utilize those technical skills. Does that make any sense to you, Brother Carl, what I've just said?
Yeah, I
Yes,
agree
brother.
with
It
what
makes
Brother
makes sense,
Raven
brother.
said.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's what I think.
I,
Go ahead, sister. Go ahead, sister.
no, I was just going to say I definitely agree with you because I can see where they're both coming from, and I agree exactly what you said. And when you were saying what you were saying, Brother Raven, you just got to look to America where certain kids will come out of a full set of education and not even be able to read and write. So that's why it needs to be of importance that we don't get to that stage because I mean they have grades and things like that. We have to pass a test in order to move on to a certain grade. You don't have that here.
Mm.
So you could just be keep moving up a year, keep moving up a year. And if they are doing what we all know that they're doing is base and they're just putting this stereotype of what's the point, we could be at a point where we just have a lot of people who are illiterate and can't read and a proportion of us, right? Because we're all one. But if it's half of us, if it's from the Caribbean, there's still a problem.
Mm.
So that's when it is something that we do need to focus on. It's not necessarily saying, although I understand what Brother Kel's saying for the points that you mentioned, it's not about getting in the mindset of the European mindset, but it's just making sure that they have, the basics to survive when they get out. If they are getting failed that badly, as we can see with our counterparts in America, where it could be really bad when some of them leave, where they don't even have the basics to survive. And if you're pulling out at like 12, 13, 14, and then you're just on the road and you're just doing, you're missing out on a lot of just basic life skills.
Can I say what I've noticed in terms of what Carl's saying? What I've noticed when I listen to Caribbean Man in terms of education, just as Carl's done, and I hear this a lot, that they underplay the value of education and start talking about Africa as all come together and kumbayaism and etc. But you don't hear that type of thing coming out of African men. They wouldn't try and say that, oh, if your children don't attend school and you can just educate them at home, that they're going to do well. When you live in a society where people who are educated are the ones that get the work, to me it comes across as a cultural issue. And it is quite often, and I noticed this, and Caribbean men, they seem to have very low expectations of themselves, especially when it comes to education. But you won't hear this type of talk coming from African man. African man couldn't come and tell you that, you can just educate your kids at home and then it's about back to Africa and World War and stuff like that. With absolutely no reference to the society that you live in and the fact that in order for you to be a doctor, in order for you to be an engineer, in order for you to be an electrician, you have to have a good standard of education. And
Well,
I
this
would
is what I
ask,
was.
I would ask a lot of African Caribbean people to look at yourself and look in comparison to how African people talk. That wouldn't wash. You wouldn't hear an African man talk like that, especially in relation to their sons. For goodness sake.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think that's
so
why I said that,
go on,
like, the
sister.
difference of. Sorry for interrupting you, Brother Cal. I was just saying that's why I initially said that there is a strong emphasis at home for education. It's education above everything else, what I find in regards to African parents. It's, if you could come home with 98% asking you what happened to the other two. There's a very strong emphasis on education. It's education, education, education. Whereas I just don't think that that's necessarily matched now in a portion of the Caribbean community. But then I can't say that's the whole of the Caribbean because my mum was very strict on education. I know plenty of old school Jamaicans who are very strict on education, but it doesn't seem to be the majority as what it once was. And as I said, I just think that they had, I don't know if it's just the fact that I just don't know what it is. Because to be honest with you, both my parents were. Well, I'd say my mum was in Britain a bit longer, but she still was born in Jamaica. But there is definitely a different culture when I look to both in regard, especially in the Nigerian culture, where education is key, is prominent. And that's what I was saying about, certain stuff that you can get from school you need, regardless. You do need, I mean, we do need doctors, we do need the likes of those people. And in order for us to need it for a community to build up our nation, they do need to go through education. They don't need to be able to have the Western mindset, but they need to have the qualifications and the skills. And I do believe as well that what I've noticed, which is different, for example, from us being here, and for example, when I talk to people in America or back home, is that when we go to school alongside white people, we don't see them necessarily as something special because we've grown up with them. What I've noticed when I speak to people from America, they were separated a lot. There's a lot of separation. There's a lot of people that have been through a whole black neighborhood, barely would even see a white person. So they have this different notion with white people. The same with when you go back home and when you go back to places in Africa, and if you're a white person, you get treated a bit better just because you're white, and it's just this emphasis of how they must be better than. I think that we actually have an opportunity here where we don't see that. In my year, no one thought the white people were better just because they were white or anything like that. Not in that sense. And there's also a strength of knowing the devil that you know. So being amongst them, learning how they stay, learning their politics, things like that, you grow stronger and be able to defeat that. But in order to do that, we do need to get it together in our educational, the way we move in education, because that's the only way we're going to defeat them, to find out their tactics, to find out their politics and things like that, because there's something different in this, especially me talking from growing up in London, that there's no superiority in that sense. There might be in other ways, but in that sense of seeing how they are and how their parents were, and there's none of that there. As that, I do notice that there is that in different parts of our cousins or in the diaspora, across the pond or in the diaspora. So I think that what we need to do is to utilize that situation, and we should be helping. It should be a problem that, especially now, as I said before, that the government's all of a sudden highlighting the differences. Before it was just black. Now they've pinpointed that actually it's the Caribbeans that are falling behind. So we need to be able to, relying on the system to do it, I don't believe there's any point doing that, because they're not going to. They've seen it, as Brother Razor said, it's been going on for 60 years. They've not cared. So it is down to what's going on at home, and that's what I said. It's the emphasis of at home. Is there an emphasis at home for when these boys go home that you need to be in your books, period? And I don't think that's happening, and it needs to be happening a bit more, because if it's not books, what is it? Street life. So as uncomfortable as it is to say, it does need to be said that there is a problem there, and we need to nip it in the bud, because it's only a problem that we can solve.
Yeah, I think when we are dealing with any children in general, if they're not into learning new technical abilities, there's always going to be distraction, and that distraction can range anywhere from street life to video games. Playing or whatever, right? It's not actually doing something that's going to give them the ability to make their life easier in a future time, but also maybe be part of a collective where they are creating businesses, creating jobs, and all the rest of it. It's like this. I guess this is the kind of mindset Brother Carl wants to rejuvenate, as in like that kind of team-based solution initiative. And I think that for everyone's saying today, I think you guys are all on the same page. It's just looking at it from different angles. And I think what Sister Betty's talking about is It's maybe like a harsh truth of how to look at data, right, and how to make it work for you. Whether it's right or not, even if the data was incorrect. If the blessing is we can look at incorrect data and it makes us even be more dedicated on something that we were dedicated on before. So there's never a bad reason to improve something, right? And I think that's how we look at it. But
Yeah.
I do think there is a value in when we say education. That's an interesting word because I will say education, but the particular word is skills. How is someone acquiring skills? Because if you want to have a nation or a people or a collective, it is necessary to have a collection of skills. And one way of skills is by in these institutions. There are particular things that can be learned. Also, we understand that ideologies are learned as well, and that's I think why Brother Carlos is saying before they join these particular institutions that you give them a firm knowledge of self and a firm knowledge of collective betterment. You see, because the institutions have their own directions and their own ideas coming from wherever it's coming from, and they have great influence. And also there's people outside of those institutions who have a life ease mechanism, a so-called life ease mechanism, and we're describing one of those as the streets that are also influential. And I think this is where injecting purpose is important at such a young age. And before Brother Carl jumps in, I'm sure he will. Being that guideline, that guidance mechanism is quite necessary. But go ahead, Brother Carl. Did you want to say something? Let me not talk too much.
Yeah, brother. I just wanted to make it clear that the African Caribbeans, brother, it just returns back to Garveyism and Pan-Africanism, because when you look at it carefully, brother, a lot of us are educated, yeah, a lot of us go university and stuff, right? But we're having these skill sets and not benefiting the people. We've got to understand this.
Brother, because you always say very good points, and let me just work with you on your points. And I think sometimes when you speak, a lot of people miss that about the good points. And just to be clear, just so I can just help to talk to the people viewing, what you're saying is there is a value in having technical skills, a very big value. However, if you're not utilizing it for yourself or your community, then essentially you're using it for someone else's benefit and undermining your own. Is there any value in what I'm saying there?
Yeah, there is, because education, the word education is to socialize you to a certain institution. And that's what we keep forgetting. You need to have a blueprint for your children. So when they go in any institution, whether it doesn't like them or not, and it really and truly should be an institution of their own, they can combat these things, exactly what you were saying. The African Caribbeans, it's that, because the elders, and it's no different than the Africans on the continent, they've been fighting for so long and they've given up and they've given up. You know what I mean? And as you said, you see it happening in the Somali community, in the Nigerian community, in the Ghanaian community, even in you know what I mean? So, we have to be realistically about, before we do education and statistics and stuff, right? We have to focus on the blueprint of how to help the African Caribbean. And I don't think talking about, what needs to be done and this is happening, we have to go back to Garveyism, brother. What I mean, or Black Betterment. That type of blueprint will help out. You know what I mean? The blueprint of Pan-Africanism is the cure for the African Caribbeans for them to succeed.
So how I see, and thank you, brother, how I see is this. We find ourselves in a situation where there's a lot of, muddlement and kerfufflement, and we find ourselves in places, in areas, separated with many different ideas. I think it's like an emergency reaction where we want to be doing everything at once when possible. So the one thing I would say is for the individual, regardless of what you do or don't know, you want to learn technical abilities to be able to survive day to day. And from a collective standpoint, you want to practice Black Betterment, meaning when you see many things happening that is against you, when you start doing history, you realize that many of these challenges are connected, and all over the world, people of African or Black or Aboriginal, whatever it might be, background, yeah, seem to be facing a consistent challenge that is shrouded in history, right? So that is the necessity of Black Betterment, as in Black people and Black issues, because you understand each other's challenges and you have similar histories. And by working together, you can have a much more stronger foundation. So those are the two guides I'm getting from today. One, learn your technical skills. Yeah, and that's not even one. That's actually two. One, understand the value of Black Betterment. Yeah, Pan Africanism, or however you be one, or whatever it might be, of Black people helping Black people on Black issues, and form an institution based upon these ideas. Yeah, and two, learn as many skills as you can. Be very valuable. Be very skilled. Yeah, there's so many jobs and things out there that's necessary for people to thrive, and learning them are important. You're more important to a Black person understanding algorithms, creating apps, and those apps do algorithms that make the life of Black people better than killing yourself for a reason that we don't even know, right? Or taking a drug every consistent day that you die, unfortunately. So there are better. You understand? And look how many. I mean, there are many people who have passed away, and they were potential greats. And I think what you have to understand, if you have children at home, look at your child, right? Your child at a certain point is a blank canvas, and you and your child are writing their future as you stay. And how do you want them to turn out? Because when you go to school and you see 30 children at school, we understand by statistics that many of them will go down a path that isn't beneficial, that might find them in consistent hardship, right? Some of it was contribute for the choices they make, and some that the choices has been presented to them. So we want to definitely have a input on minimizing challenges, and sometimes to give people an easy life, we have to give them a hard talk, right? So these are the things to think about. I think Brother Carl and Sister Christian is saying this, and definitely Sister Bay is highlighting the values of being skilled and consistent, and actually having that hard talk with your children about the value of learning abilities, learning abilities. So that's what I'm pushing forward. Anyone want to jump in?
Just not relying on the state. I think it's definitely about home. Like, you cannot rely on the state. Don't ever get tricked and fooled that you are the same as them. You're not. You're not going to get the same pass. You're not. So the emphasis really needs to be at home with these children. Back.
What I did when I was looking at Caribbean boys, I thought, let me look at their counterparts in the Caribbean. And one of the articles came up was by the Jamaican Observer as to why Jamaican boys underperform. And then it started talking about what definitions of masculinity, and that to perform well in school was seen as feminine, and that you were going to be accused of being gay. And also, if you spoke standard English, you were going to be ridiculed by your peers for speaking in standard English. Yeah, and I was quite surprised at that.
And this is in Jamaica for the kids born in Jamaica.
Yeah, this is where I'm reading Jamaican Observer.
Right. Well, I'm aware in certain parts of America and Jamaica of certain things. So it's an interesting thing because it's a back and forth in the sense of, I'm aware that if you speak a certain way, you might be ridiculed. But then at the same time, say in Jamaica, you couldn't work on television if you couldn't speak Queen's English. So there was that kind of dynamic going on as well, right? And then there's that concept of actually respecting the actual Patois-based kind of language that is developed as a unique, distinctive Jamaican or Caribbean identity. So that exists in correlation with standard English. These kinds of stuff. But I agree. I think we never want to be in a situation where we ridicule improving one's knowledge on how to do a particular task. You see, that's something we want to definitely not. And I think what I find important, I'm a solutionist. So one thing I'm saying is, uh, when you have children, you can see easily how they're distracted and what distracts them. I think one thing you can do is find a way how to correlate with what distracts them with what is interesting. So, case in point, you might have a lot of like people who they might be into music, right? And they want to be singers, rappers, dancers, what they might be, right? And you're trying to get them into science, and you find it hard. Well, the funny thing is, science deals with music in the sense of like there is parts of science that talks about sound waves, and if you want to be an engineer or record music or whatever, then understanding sound waves is something like that. So then you're dealing with a science, a sound engineer, right? So already, if someone's into music, you say, okay, well, everyone wants to be the latest Beyonce or Michael Jackson, who it might be, I don't know, right? But what about the person who actually records them, or what about the person who manages them, or understanding that skill set so you could aid your potential career? Just trying to really feel aware of how you can turn someone's, I don't want to say fantasy dream, whatever, but someone's kind of fantasy dream into a tangible craft that you could actually segue into different skills. So if they never become Beyonce or whoever's the latest, they still have a skill set that allows them to charge and allows them to fit in a certain kind of teaching environment where they can, earn a living off a technical skill they've acquired through training. If that makes sense, everyone.
Okay, so Brother Raven, one time, right, you were speaking about, and I agree with this, you were speaking about pain that black people suffer, right?
Mm.
I can't remember what episode, right? And this returns back to what I was saying is that when you understand the African Caribbean, right, there is an experience that we've all faced on the continent, right? So you don't want to be affected too much by that experience. So, for example, in that, yeah, and I totally respect this. People keep thinking that the patois is, English or things like that. No, it's not. It's actually an African dialect with English words, and the fact that they had to fight to keep that, to keep on to their Africanness, right, is a striving mechanism itself. When people used to laugh over the people speaking English, proper English, right? People's got to understand this is that you want to try your best to keep further and further away from the mindset of the Europeans. You see, the Africanness keeps coming out of the African Caribbeans. And this is what a lot of us don't understand. Going to school and, speaking correct English and all these types of things, it's looked down upon. Why is it looked down upon? Because who wants to, have the spirit of the oppressor inside of you? But the Honorable Marcus Garvey now, with his blueprint and tactic, to sum it up, he teaches you this. Okay. Be around the oppressor, learn from them, but Pan-Africanize your mind. Now that makes perfect sense. Because sometimes, right, especially in war, you have to take on the spirit and take certain things from your enemy, but it must not absorb inside of you. So if the African Caribbeans, right, held on to the blueprint of Garveyism, because Garvey came from Jamaica anyway, and he said to himself, I'm a Caribbean, I'm an African, and weaponize it with Pan-Africanism when it came to the education system, then you'll see a lot of improvement. As I said, Brother Raven, it returns back to, as what Sister Kushi was saying, the home. The home is the first institution. The home teaches you who you are, where you come from, and the political side. The past and that is good to know about it, but now we have to focus on the strategy of understanding that you're in war, and unfortunately, non-Africans are not your friends. They're psychologically, mentally, and even physically are trying to exterminate you. So here are these blueprints, what the Honorable Marcus Garvey came down. So when you're learning English, learn the English, but you're learning it to better Africa. Learn how to go to uni. You learn it to better Africa. But because Garveyism has been removed, and you're conflicted with the situation of, well, I don't want to be learning English because they're my oppressor, right? That conflict comes into the African Caribbean. It's a conflict, and we have to understand these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I know out of everything, I'm more of a Garvey at heart. And when Brother Cal said what he said there, that's exactly what I was saying. It speaks to my warrior spirit. Is that you've got to know your enemy or your oppressor in order to defeat them. So why not utilize all of the knowledge and gain as much as you can from it, but then pour it back into your community? And I think that's what is lacking in
That
the statistics that we're seeing, is that, we're not seeing that, we're not trying to turn you into, white English boys, whatever. We're trying to gain you that knowledge for you to fend yourself with the skills to survive in this society. But with that knowledge, it's both things. It's both of exactly what Raven said. It's both of what Betty's saying. Gain that knowledge, get better, get as much as you can. But then, as what Brother Cal was saying, now utilize it for your people.
Yeah, that's I noticed that being the missing piece in many discussions when it comes to black betterment and black people in general. People of the African diaspora. I'm well aware that you have many capable people. Historically, you've seen that, but like Brother Carl says, their mind hasn't been Africanized. It hasn't been projected inwards. So everything they learn is for the betterment of the community they find themselves in, and that definitely is not the black community at all. So that's why there's many people looking at some of the richest, most established black people, and they're bamboozled. But how comes they're so successful yet nothing to anything even trickles down or even highlights any kind of black betterment in any real way? And that's because they never were that way inclined before. They wasn't institutionalized within their own communities to do any kind of betterment work. So greetings all. Let me say greetings to Trey.
And what you said as well, Brother Raven, as well, and you said about the music. Look at the height. Some of our best that have hit the pinnacle in music, when they learned better, like Michael Jackson and Prince, they wanted to start taking their own rights back and owning. That's when they got the biggest problems.
Yes.
You know what I mean? When they started getting into the business of music and not just music, right? That's when all fire broke off. So it's so true.
Yeah. So it is an interesting dynamic. But one thing Value can say is when it comes to learning of abilities, you can learn in your house, you can learn from your enemies, you can learn in another country. Anything that allows you to have a practical knowledge of something is valuable. And I think as a community, and I said this one of the early days, looking through the world and trying to establish what is valuable, what are certain skill sets that could be most valuable when it comes to building a people. And then once we establish that, I obviously have my ideas, but other people have different ideas, and we push it on the table. And once we establish that, we then this is what we are gonna try to find ways to market these ideas to the next generation, and make it the most best seeming. So, for example, once you have everyone correlated, if we decide that app building is important for the people, we make sure that in our branding and in our psychology and in our musicians and influencers are all that way inclined. Because you got to think, right, for the small part of the community of people who do what we are defining as destructive things, someone somewhere had to make destruction nice seeming. You see. So we know that if it's possible to make destruction nice seeming, then it's very possible to make constructive stuff nice seeming, whatever. So this is the thing. But sadly we lost Sister Betty's gone, and I think Sister Cushy had to run off. But we have had a good show. And is there anything else you'd like to say, Brother Carl?
Yeah, I just want to say that there was a couple heroes that implemented what I was saying. One of them is Nimamba Izikwani, who was a Nigerian, and he went to the same basically a university in Philadelphia with Kwame Nkrumah, right? And they were studying not only to build up West Africa, but there was also using Garveyism. If you look on the African continent, Brother Raven, Garveyism hit South Africa, it went to East Africa, it went to West, it went to North Africa as well. You know what I mean? This is why you've got the Libyan flag. It's got the red, black, and green. The point is, what I'm saying is that they would go to the non-African institutions, right? And they would pan-Africanize their mind and go back and build up the country. The African Caribbeans, the parents, they have to do the same thing. You know what I mean? We can be talking about the the solutions of the goal, but in order to get that, bro, we have to focus on the basics, or we're just going to be in the same situation. The pan-Africanizing, the blueprint is definitely going to help the African Caribbeans. But I know 101 that the African Caribbean parents, they've abandoned Garveyism now. Do you understand? They've abandoned Pan-Africanism, and that's what they're suffering. No different than in the African continent. They're suffering because they've abandoned it as well. I don't care how much times they learn education, build up the thing and that. Why is Africa in the situation what it's in now? Huh? Why is it in the situation that what it's in now? So that's what I'm saying. It's like the education is not the situation. It's the mindset, man. You know what I mean?
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I think that's something that I've been trying to push in the sense of having clear direction in goals, right? Like, you know, you're from a particular people, and with you want to do something that is in those people's best interest, and I think that seems to be lost many times when it comes to like being integrated in communities and stuff, or even not, to be honest. Even internationally, it seems to be forgotten. But this is why we have these shows. This is why the nature of this show is Black Batman. It really is a re-education mindset is so key. Yeah, it really is the trying to get to the heart, you know, and start a new foundation, or just not a new foundation, but resurrect some of the old necessity. Because what you tend to find, brothers and sisters, is you know, history repeats itself. You know, what happens is, you know, something happens that's very, very non-beneficial. Everyone comes together, tries to do one or two things, and then after time goes by, they forget it, and you know, then that same incident happens again. It repeats. So I think having a consistent pillar is important, and that's why, you know, my thing is one of the two foundations that's going to improve Black Batman is the concept of Black love and what that looks like, right? Multifaceted idea, and also Black economics. These two things alone, if you understand these two, the value of how to expand them, you will get a very powerful people. But in order to do that, the mindset, the pillars, you know, how we see ourselves as a team, you know. And I do thank the guests for coming in tonight and us talking, because we are creating a way of communicating where we can talk in a way, agree and disagree, but find solutions. And yeah, definitely Sanko for this time. Stop history repeating. Yep. Definitely agree, disagree, but trying to find solutions, because one of the things that I'm trying to train, and hopefully we're trying to train the community, is that ability to allow yourself to accept the reality that is necessary to take control of your own destiny as a people, and to practice Black love and to practice Black economics, you know. And whether you identify as Pan-Africanism, B1, Black Betterment, for me they're all synonymous. It's just words as time changes. But yeah, we understand the necessity and how to be constructive in these areas. And hopefully, anyone's listening, please, if there's any topics you'd like us to cover, message us, invite your friends. Let's discuss, because this is how ideas formulate. This is how they grow. We're at the grassroots at the moment, but you know, it doesn't take long for the grassroots to become a tree, you know, and that tree bears fruit. So let's keep talking. I'd to thank all the guests. We're gonna cut a bit early today, I reckon. I've got some things I have to jump onto, but it was really good to talk to you guys. And remember, if there's any topics that you want to cover, let me know. You can let me know now in the forum, or you can email me, or you can Instagram at RapRaven. I'll put that in the thing at Rap Raven on Instagram. Rap Raven, voila. And if there's any topics you want to do, we can do. And Brother Carl, if there's anything you want to cover, let me know now, and I'm sure we can pull it in the pipeline to talk about at future times.
Yeah, just more focus. Obviously you're doing it anyway and that, but an emphasis on the youth. Teaching them the blueprint, how to handle when they're going to schools, when they're going to work, and building up them to have their own thing. I think we have to focus a lot on that. No disrespect or nothing to anybody, but it's the youth that are catching how the grown-ups, brother. They've lived. Some of them have gone, and some of them are floating. But it's the youth.
Yeah.
They need to be taught the blueprint, how to survive in workplaces, schools. How to build up the thing. If you could do panels like that, which I know you're doing it anyway, but panels like that we can get them on there, and you know what I mean.
I'm glad you said that, because the thing is, even now after this, I've got some videos I'm viewing just about children's perspective on life at the moment, just the younger ones. And Brother Ahmed is 21 years old. He's obviously a big man, but he's still relatively young compared to me, whatever. So so definitely his age group and younger. I don't know how old they are when they get their own YouTube channel and then how to go on panels, but it would be good for us to have that. And I guess with the idea to obviously pick the mind to see what's going on, but also to implement certain concepts that might be very new to them because their parents didn't practice it or whatever themselves. Somewhere along the line, something wasn't taught. All you have to do is not teach something from one generation before you know it. It's utilized, right? And that could be the contributing factor of why there's so much confusion about, like not understanding why certain pains are consistent, or looking around the community, you're not realizing why is it that there seems to be no solution. Oh, just looking in other communities for your own solution. Okay, let's say thank you to. So we're going to start by saying thank you to obviously Brother Carl, Sister Kushti, Betty for bringing up the idea, and I'd like to thank everyone for viewing. There you go. And any last words you'd like to say, Brother Carl, before we end?
Nah, brother, just good show and that, man. And
thank
you. Give thanks to the Supreme Consciousness, and that's all I want to say.
Thank you, family. A big up my Sister Betty for the topic, and we'll return next week. But remember, guys, we are, like Brother Carl said, we are going to try to be more youth focused in the future. So if there's any younger generations who want to speak, let's express themselves so we can pick their mind, let them know, pass this on. They're always welcome. It's an open panel. Thank you, and until next week, Friday, 10. See you then. Thank you very much. Black Betterment. See ya.